So, chapter 1 of your book talks about how to explain health inequality using two main theories. The first theory is fundamental cause theory, and the second theory is the risk factor model. And when we talk about fundamental cause, we are referring to the social economic characteristics, the social conditions of a given place, of a given locale, that affects people's access to health, opportunity for a better health. So, fundamental causes are essentially the social factors. And if you turn to page 4 of your book, towards the very end of page 4, we see that the social conditions or the social economic characteristics of a given neighborhood, of a given place, affects a person's health or well-being or health outcomes through a list of intervening mechanisms. And in the 19th century, these are the intervening mechanisms, 19th century. If you look at the diagram again, so is typhoid fever, diphtheria, I don't know how to say that, syphilis, measles, and other kinds of infectious disease. Do they still determine health outcomes in a given location? Or these are a thing in the past, including sanitary condition and the hygiene condition of a given location? Are the intervening mechanisms still valid, or are they passé? Are they a thing in the past?
In the US, they're definitely not as common anymore.
Mm-hmm. So it varies by location. Maybe in some backward, rural, poor towns in the US, they still play a role. They still contribute to health outcomes. But in most cities, most towns, most counties in the US, and in other first world countries, maybe they no longer play a role, or they play a very minor role. If that is the case, why the impact of socio-economic characteristics on health remains? If this middle part disappear, why socio-economic status continues to have an effect on health? You rightly told me that, yeah, in many places in the US, we are in the 21st century now. A lot of these factors no longer play a role, or play a very minimal role on health and well-being. But why, if we look at statistics, different numbers of diseases, different percentages of people with different diseases, different illness, diabetes, heart attacks, heart failures, cardiovascular diseases, they are still affected by the socio-economic well-being of that place. What is going on here? You say we can do away with the intervening mechanisms. But what's implied in this book is that even if we do away the middle part, the intervening mechanism, the relationship between socio-economic status and health is going to remain for long periods of time. It's not going to go away. What's the reason? So maybe now we are in the 21st century. Maybe sanitation, hygiene, they still play a role in health and well-being in people living in different locations. But now we have new intervening mechanisms replacing the old one. Like what Francesca just told us. Access to healthy and nutritious food is one important factor, replacing the old ones we just saw. And with medical advancement, new screening procedures, CAT scan, MRI scans, they replace the old intervening mechanisms as well. The same thing for new health procedures with R&D. And not everybody can afford healthy food, nutritious food. Not everybody has a job, a permanent full-time job. Not everybody has health coverage to afford all kinds of screening health procedures. So this in turn affects disparities in health outcomes again. A new set of intervening mechanisms comes into place as time goes by. So because of that, this relationship is going to remain for a long, long period of time until the world ends. I'm sorry. So as you can see from one of your pages on Canvas, this is the focus of the fundamental cause theory. It implies that social class differences in health status is not going to go away over time, because they are always going to work through the intervening mechanisms. In the 19th century, on page 4, it used to be typhoid fever, diphtheria, all kinds of infectious diseases and measles. Maybe people from different social class, they are immune or not immune to all these infectious diseases to different degree, depending on their socio-economic well-being. But now, with advent of medical technology, with advent of R&D, some intervening mechanisms disappear. But new intervening mechanisms come in. And people with more income, people who are highly educated, they have more knowledge about nutrition. They have more knowledge about each screening processes and procedures. They may be more inclined and more able to use them to better their health. So this part is the focus of the fundamental cause theory. Social class differences in health is going to work through those intervening mechanisms. And social class differences or social economic differences in health is not going to disappear over time, because intervening mechanisms replaces themselves as time goes by. And your book also talks about the risk factor theory or risk factor model. So, policymakers, practitioners who focus on the risk factor model, they kind of disregard the fundamental cause theory. They will focus on this part and this part. They will focus on how the intervening mechanisms affects health outcomes. They tend to be more oblivious about social class differences, social economic status differences. So they will focus their intervention, prevention mechanisms on all these intervening mechanisms to improve people's health and well-being. That's a distinction between the two. Are we clear?